Henry Brearley was at the Dilworthys constantly and on such terms of intimacy that he came and went without question. The senator was not an inhospitable man, he liked to have guests in his house, and Harry's gay humor and rattling way entertained him, for even the most devout men and busy statesmen must have hours of relaxation. Harry himself believed that he was of great service in the university business, and that the success of the scheme depended upon him to a great degree. He spent many hours in talking it over with the senator after dinner. He went so far as to consider whether it would be worth his while to take the professorship of civil engineering in the new institution. But it was not the senator's society nor his dinners, at which the scapegrace remarked that there was too much grace and too little wine, which attracted him to the house. The fact was the poor fellow hung around there day after day for the chance of seeing Laura for 5 minutes at a time. For her presence at dinner he would endure the long bore of the senator's talk afterwards, while Laura was off at some assembly, or excused herself on the plea of fatigue. Now and then he accompanied her to some reception, and rarely, on off nights, he was blessed with her company in the parlor, when he sang, and was chatty and vivacious and performed 100 little tricks of imitation and ventriloquism, and made himself as entertaining as a man could be. It puzzled him not a little that all his fascinations seemed to go for so little with Laura. It was beyond his experience with women. Sometimes Laura was exceedingly kind and petted him a little, and took the trouble to exert her powers of pleasing, and to entangle him deeper and deeper. But this, it angered him afterwards to think, was in private. In public she was beyond his reach, and never gave occasion to the suspicion that she had any affair with him. He was never permitted to achieve the dignity of a serious flirtation with her in public. "Why do you treat me so?" he once said, reproachfully. "Treat you how?" asked Laura in a sweet voice, lifting her eyebrows. "You know well enough. You let other fellows monopolize you in society, and you are as indifferent to me as if we were strangers. Can I help it if they are attentive? Can I be rude? But we are such old friends, Mr. Brearley, that I didn't suppose you would be jealous." "I think I must be a very old friend, then, by your conduct towards me. By the same rule I should judge that Colonel Selby must be very new." Laura looked up quickly, as if about to return an indignant answer to such impertinence, but she only said, "Well, what of Colonel Selby, saucebox?" "Nothing, probably, you'll care for. Your being with him so much as the town talk, that's all?" "What do people say?" asked Laura calmly. "Oh, they say a good many things. You are offended, though, to have me speak of it?" "Not in the least. You are my true friend. I feel that I can trust you." "You wouldn't deceive me, Harry," throwing into her eyes a look of trust and tenderness that melted away all his petulance and distrust. "What do they say?" "Some say that you've lost your head about him, others that you don't care any more for him than you do for a dozen others, but that he is completely fascinated with you and about to desert his wife, and others say it is nonsense to suppose you would entangle yourself with a married man, and that your intimacy only arises from the matter of the cotton claims, for which he wants your influence with Dilworthy. But you know everybody is talked about more or less in Washington." "I shouldn't care, but I wish you wouldn't have so much to do with Selby, Laura," continued Harry, fancying that he was now upon such terms that his advice would be heeded. "And you believe these slanders?" "I don't believe anything against you, Laura, but Colonel Selby does not mean you any good. I know you wouldn't be seen with him if you knew his reputation." "Do you know him?" Laura asked, as indifferently as she could. "Only a little. I was at his lodgings in Georgetown a day or two ago, with Colonel Sellers. Sellers wanted to talk with him about some patent remedy he has, eye water, or something of that sort, which he wants to introduce into Europe. Selby is going abroad very soon." Laura started, in spite of her self-control. And his wife, does he take his family? Did you see his wife? Yes. A dark little woman, rather worn, must have been pretty once though. Has 3 or 4 children, one of them a baby. They'll all go, of course. She said she should be glad enough to get away from Washington. You know Selby has got his claim allowed, and they say he has had a run of luck lately at Morrissey's. Laura heard all this in a kind of stupor, looking straight at Harry, without seeing him. Is it possible, she was thinking, that this base wretch, after all his promises, will take his wife and children and leave me? Is it possible the town is saying all these things about me? And a look of bitterness coming into her face, does the fool think he can escape so? You are angry with me, Laura, said Harry, not comprehending in the least what was going on in her mind. Angry, she said, forcing herself to come back to his presence. With you? Oh no. I'm angry with the cruel world, which pursues an independent woman as it never does a man. I'm grateful to you, Harry, I'm grateful to you for telling me of that odious man. And she rose from her chair and gave him her pretty hand, which the silly fellow took, and kissed, and clung to. And he said many silly things, before she disengaged herself gently, and left him, saying it was time to dress, for dinner. And Harry went away, excited, and a little hopeful, but only a little. The happiness was only a gleam, which departed and left him thoroughly miserable. She never would love him, and she was going to the devil, besides. He couldn't shut his eyes to what he saw, nor his ears to what he heard of her. What had come over this thrilling young lady-killer? It was a pity to see such a gay butterfly broken on a wheel. Was there something good in him, after all, that had been touched? He was in fact madly in love with this woman. P365.jpg, 32K. It is not for us to analyze the passion and say whether it was a worthy one. It absorbed his whole nature and made him wretched enough. If he deserved punishment, what more would you have? Perhaps this love was kindling a new heroism in him. He saw the road on which Laura was going clearly enough, though he did not believe the worst he heard of her. He loved her too passionately to credit that for a moment. And it seemed to him that if he could compel her to recognize her position, and his own devotion, she might love him, and that he could save her. His love was so far ennobled, and become a very different thing from its beginning in Hawkeye. Whether he ever thought that if he could save her from ruin, he could give her up himself, is doubtful. Such a pitch of virtue does not occur often in real life, especially in such natures as Harry's, whose generosity and unselfishness were matters of temperament rather than habits or principles. He wrote a long letter to Laura, an incoherent, passionate letter, pouring out his love as he could not do in her presence, and warning her as plainly as he dared of the dangers that surrounded her, and the risks she ran of compromising herself in many ways. Laura read the letter, with a little sigh maybe, as she thought of other days, but with contempt also, and she put it into the fire with the thought, they are all alike.